The sound came first, heavy, metallic, impossible to ignore. Leg shackles clanking across the polished floor of a New York City federal courtroom. Reporters looked up from their notebooks. Cameras shifted. A quiet murmur spread through the packed room as Nicolás Maduro, the longtime leader of Venezuela, stepped through the door for the first time as a defendant. Not a head of state. Before the judge could even begin, Maduro spoke. He said he had been kidnapped. Calmly, almost deliberately. He told the room that he had been taken from his home in Caracas and brought to the United States against his will. When Judge Alvin Hellerstein asked him to confirm his identity so the arraignment could formally begin, Maduro didn't hesitate. He confirmed his name, his title, and then repeated the claim. President of Venezuela, prisoner, captured on January 3rd. The 92-year-old judge cut him off quickly, reminding him there would be a time and place to address those claims. For now, the court needed to proceed. That brief exchange set the tone for one of the most dramatic federal court appearances in recent memory. A sitting foreign leader standing in shackles, accusing the United States of abducting him, while facing some of the most serious allegations ever brought against a head of state. As the courtroom settled, the weight of the moment became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was history unfolding in real time. Reports say Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, were arrested over the weekend during a surprise operation carried out by U.S. forces in Venezuela. According to what's been reported, the operation happened overnight and allegedly involved coordinated strikes on military installations near Caracas. Details remain disputed, and officials on both sides have offered sharply different versions of events. But what's clear is that by Monday afternoon, Maduro and Flores were in New York, standing before a federal judge. Both pleaded not guilty. "I'm innocent. I'm a decent man," Maduro said, his voice steady. Flores followed quietly, telling the court she was completely innocent. They were dressed like any other federal detainees. Blue and orange jail shirts, khaki pants, headphones over their ears to listen to the Spanish translation of the proceedings. An attorney seated between them. Nothing about the scene suggested power or authority. And yet, Maduro's posture told a different story. He sat upright, expression controlled, taking meticulous notes on a yellow legal pad. At one point, he even asked the judge to confirm that he would be allowed to keep the pad with him afterward. Small detail, but telling. This was a man who understood symbolism, who understood the value of appearing composed when everything else had been stripped away. As he entered the courtroom, Maduro turned briefly to acknowledge members of the audience. A nod here, a quiet greeting there. Some recognized him instantly. Others stared in disbelief. This was the same room where high-profile figures had stood before. The same courtroom where Sean Diddy Combs had been tried and convicted just months earlier. But this felt different, bigger, heavier. During the 40-minute hearing, Maduro remained mostly calm. Even when the charges were read aloud, even as the judge explained the process, even as it became clear that he and his wife would remain in federal custody for now. Then, near the end, the room erupted. A man in the public gallery suddenly shouted that Maduro would pay for his crimes. The words cut through the courtroom like a blade. For the first time, Maduro reacted visibly. He turned toward the voice, his composure cracking just enough to reveal anger beneath the surface. "I'm a president and a prisoner of war," he shouted back in Spanish. U.S. Marshals moved quickly. The man was escorted out of the courtroom, reportedly in tears. The room fell silent again, but the emotional damage had already been done. The moment lingered, heavy and unresolved. For many watching, that exchange captured the core tension of the case. To some, Maduro is a criminal finally facing justice. To others, he is a symbol of resistance, now humiliated on foreign soil. And for many Venezuelans, The emotions are far more complicated. One of the people sitting in the courtroom that day was Maybert Petty, a Venezuelan journalist who has spent years covering Maduro's administration. She later said it felt surreal watching her former leader walk in wearing prison clothes, escorted by U.S. Marshals, but the moment was also deeply personal. Petty said the reported missile strikes during the arrest damaged her family's home near Fuerte Tuna in Caracas. While the political world debated legality and power, her family was dealing with shattered walls and broken windows. For her, the courtroom scene wasn't just historic. It was painful. That sense of collateral damage echoed throughout the proceedings. Cilia Flores, Maduro's wife, barely spoke. Unlike her husband, she kept her head down. Bandages were visible near her eyes and forehead. Her lawyers told the court she suffered injuries during the arrest and requested immediate medical attention. They asked for x-rays to examine what they said could be bruised ribs and a possible fracture. The contrast between the two was striking. Maduro projected defiance. Flores projected fragility. Whether that contrast was natural or strategic is something observers will debate for years. But in that moment, it added another layer to an already complex scene. This wasn't just about a president. It was about a couple, facing the full force of the U.S. justice system together. Neither Maduro nor Flores requested bail during the hearing, though they retained the right to do so later. For now, they remain in federal custody. The charges themselves are sweeping. U.S. prosecutors have accused Maduro of narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess those weapons. Flores is charged alongside him, as well as their son and several other individuals. These allegations have circulated for years. Sanctions, indictments, accusations whispered in diplomatic circles and shouted on cable news. But this was the first time they were being read aloud in a courtroom with Maduro physically present to hear them. And that alone marks a turning point. Supporters of Maduro argue the case is politically motivated, part of a long-running effort to destabilize Venezuela's government. Critics argue it's long overdue accountability for alleged crimes that devastated the region. Both sides point to history. Both sides claim moral high ground. What's undeniable is the precedent this sets. Never before has a sitting foreign leader been brought into a U.S. courtroom under circumstances like these. The implications stretch far beyond this one case. Questions about sovereignty, international law, and the limits of power are now unavoidable. What does it mean when a superpower arrests a foreign president on his own soil? Where does law end and politics begin? And how will other nations respond? Those questions hovered over the courtroom like an unspoken presence. Outside, reactions poured in. Supporters protested. Critics celebrated. Social media erupted with clips, commentary, and speculation. Some focused on Maduro's words, others on Flores' injuries, others still on the judge's expression as he tried to keep control of a room charged with emotion and history. And through it all, one image kept circulating. The shackles, the yellow legal pad. The moment a man who once commanded armies stood silent as a judge explained his rights. The next hearing has been scheduled for March 17th. Between now and then, lawyers will argue motions. Governments will issue statements and narratives will harden. Evidence will be debated. Claims will be challenged. And the world will be watching, because this case isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about power. It's about how quickly roles can reverse. How a man who once spoke from balconies now speaks from behind a defense table. How history can compress decades of authority into a single, silent walk across a courtroom floor. No verdict has been reached. No evidence has been tested in front of a jury. For now, these remain allegations, fiercely contested and deeply political. But one thing is already certain. That sound at the beginning, the clanking of leg shackles, marked a moment the world won't soon forget.